Hey, my name is Greg Lewis. I work for Rolls-Royce. I'm the regional manager for the Northeastern United States. Part of what we're trying to accomplish is we want to make sure everybody knows about the FAST website. The website information is listed up here. This presentation is actually available on that website if you follow the instructions on the screen. If you have a prior registration for FAST, it's really quick. If you don't have a prior registration into FAST, it may take 2 to 3 days to get that registration, so you'll have and be able to gain access to where this presentation is located. Here's some screenshots that you're going to experience. You're going to have to click OK on the very first screen up there. The second screen, if you hit that public access to EPUBs, you'll enter your name and your company. That will grant you some access, limited access into FAST. You can get access into the general folder there, and under the M250 HAI Tech Brief, you'll be able to pull up this presentation. Again, it will take a few hours to gain that access once you fill out your name and your email address. This presentation is export controlled. You can see the export control information on your screen. The only reason we have an export control document in all the presentations given by Rolls-Royce, Rolls-Royce has multiple government contracts with our military. So every piece of documentation of an engine that is on that particular airframe has to have some kind of documentation, export control provisions put in place. That's the only reason this screen is here. This information is intended, should not be used or thought of as a replacement of what the technical manuals are giving you. So please, when you're watching this and I mentioned do X, do Y, do Z, it's supposed to be in conjunction with the technical manual, not in replacement of the technical manual. Here's our agenda today. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about the M250 customer support, where it's located, what they can do for you, where you can find the technical pubs at, information on how to log into FAST. We'll also discuss the M250 training that's available at our facility. Some of it is online. Some of it is absolutely free. All you have to do is sign up. Then we'll go through the technical updates, some field tips, and some reminders. One of the best websites you can use for anything related to M250 is the mym250.com website. This is a one-stop web link that will provide you immediate access to the FAST, the aftermarket services, the directory, your BDI, your Boeing distribution, and all the other OEMs. Also, while we're on this screen, I'll point out right there where it says parts and publications. If you're looking for publications as in documentation to put in your log binders, that is the quickest and fastest way to get to your forms that you're going to need to put into your log binders, your historical records. We also have a website. Without using the website, we have an app that you can use on your smartphone, the Rolls-Royce First Network app. It does absolutely everything the website does. They're linked. So at any point you need to talk to your regional manager, talk to the First Network provider, direct contact to your customer support representatives. There's always the 800 number listed there above. That phone is manned 24/7. I'm not going to tell you it's going to be answered 24/7, but somebody will call you back just like your regional managers will on Saturday and Sunday included. Your Indianapolis customer support team, if you do call that 1-800 number, every inquiry that's made there has to be logged into the customer hub database. That's not a bad thing. It's a good thing because that database is where we can go and pull all the other information to find out who's had the same problem or a related problem. That way we can see if it's something that's systemic across the fleet or if it's a site specific issue that just needs specific training, or maybe you're the first that has an issue that's going to become a systemic issue, so we can get everything tracked and move it forward as needed. Your first network facility, what we call the first network facility, are authorized repair and overhaul facilities. Your AMROCs. You have your AMCs, your authorized maintenance centers, your authorized repair facilities. For the people that are not in the Americas, you also have military overhaul facilities, authorized military overhaul facilities. And again, Boeing Distribution is our only source. What used to be Aviall, they're our only source to get you a part. Everything has to go through Boeing. We also have the support team and then the civilian field support team, the regional managers. Here's a map of all the different AMROCs, authorized maintenance facilities, your military facilities, and their branch locations across the world. This page shows some additional authorized repair service centers that are still in network. They're just slightly smaller. They can also do a lot of on-wing repair stuff for you. Here's a map of the US and Canadian regional management team. Like I mentioned at the beginning, my name is Greg Lewis. You can see me there in the right-hand corner of the United States. I cover the northeastern sector. Again, if you see the region you're in here in a few slides, you'll get a phone list so you can figure out who your regional manager is so you can contact them if you have any issues or questions. There's the international team, the international map. Here's that list of phone numbers. All of us below, Reg Hall is actually the service executive. He is who all of us report directly to. So if you have a problem with your individual regional manager, you can reach out, contact Reg Hall. He will be able to resolve your issue and hopefully resolve the issues that you're having with that particular regional manager. Here's how you can get to your tech pubs at Boeing Distribution. Some key things to note here is if the paper manuals are going away, but if you currently have paper manuals that are more than 6 months old, you probably need just to reorder and get a new manual that's going to come with all 6 months of those revisions already in place. The red lines there, we're going to discontinue issuing CD-ROMs. I think it's in mid-October that's going to stop. Your USB media is going to be at the end of 2024. Again, expect that September, October 2024. And all paper media is going to be discontinued in 25. Again, I would expect that earlier than later, probably June, July 25 timeframe. All of your CEBs, CSLs, anything like that you need, they're all going to be located on FAST. They have been for 15 years now, so you don't have to worry about them coming to you as a printed copy. You can log into FAST and be able to print them off yourself there. If you have access to the Boeing website, you can log in. All of our manuals are kept on Boeing. Once you pay for your subscription, you'll be able to get into Boeing. If you look across the top blue banner there where it says EPUB Viewer, you'll have to click that little, it looks like a grayed out word library. If you click on library, it will change the format and that will actually take you to live pubs. What we're trying to talk about here are your offline pubs. You can click into the portal just like you are. You can do an ePubs training that will explain to you how to download your pubs. If you guys have people that are venturing away from where the internet is good and they may not have direct access to the internet, rather than copying pages out of the book to send them for whatever the troubleshooting may be they need, you can always take the computer and have full access to your pubs by using the offline option. Every time you log in, it will search your saved pubs to see what the date is on them. If it has been, if it is out of sync, it will prompt you and you can sync them again. We request you keep them in sync. Obviously, as an OEM, we want you to do it every day. If you do it once or twice a month, you're probably going to be good. I would absolutely recommend doing it before you dispatch a guy out to do a job. If you're actually looking for the logbook pages, like I said before, the easiest way to do it is at the mym250.com link. Click on that top scroll bar up there where it says publications. It will take you directly to the page that you're seeing on the next slide. If you have to go through the Boeing website, you'll have to scroll all the way to the bottom. You can click on suppliers. Once you click on suppliers, obviously we're looking for a Rolls-Royce form. Rather than scroll alphabetically, you can click on the R, then you'll scroll down to Rolls-Royce. Once you pull up Rolls-Royce, you'll get the form that's on the top of the screen there. That is the form that M250 will take you directly to. You can pick the form you're looking for. This is for your blank log cards. So that is how you're going to go and find your 8x11 log cards. The larger formatted historical record log cards are kept there. If you need the smaller formatted log cards, you can contact Boeing Distribution directly. They keep them in stock, but they don't have them listed for purchase. You have to purchase them in bulk. The last time we had somebody try to purchase them, they were in bulks of 100, which makes it unrealistic for small shops won't ever use 100 of those forms. So what our recommendation is contact your first network facility or first network provider. They should be able to give you the 2 or 3 forms you're going to need throughout the year to get you through until your engine gets into them for the next service. And we're paying for those forms at the first network facility, so they shouldn't charge you much more than shipping to get those forms. Here is how you can log into FAST in the public ePubs library. This is where all your CSLs, CEBs, and just general information is kept. You don't have to log in. You don't have to have a login/password to utilize this section of it. Once you get to the FAST website that's listed there above in blue, in the web link, you can click on the public ePubs library. You'll put in your name, your email, that information, and then you'll have to click what group, what documents you want to view, and those documents will be readily accessible for you. We're going to talk about training a little bit. Rolls-Royce has a training facility in Indianapolis, Indiana. They will teach anywhere from the 1-week maintenance course on the M250. They have a 3-day familiarization course, or they have the 2-week, what is referred to here as a heavy maintenance course. If you're dealing with the Series 4 engines, your FADAC controlled engines, I would recommend the heavy maintenance course. Not because I'm trying to upsell, simply because during the heavy maintenance course, they do about a 6-hour, 4 to 6 hour block where they talk about the FADAC, the ECU, how to use the maintenance terminal software to connect to the system and everything else. And during that second week of this course, you'll actually be breaking the gearbox apart and seeing inside the gearbox. Not that we're asking people to do that in field sites, but it is a good thing to at least have a working knowledge of how and why. There's a lot more theory of operations in the heavy maintenance course than there is in the standard 1-week maintenance training course. Again, the enrollment is there online. Our registrar is pretty on the ball. If you put in your email, usually within 1 business day, she is contacting you back to find out what exactly you need and how she can help you. Some other courses that are there, that same web link that was prior, you can do a lot of the e-learning courses there that we currently have available for free. This list is what was accurate and available based on last March. We try to add 1 course onto this every month, so there may be 5 or 6 additional courses up there, maybe more by the time you're seeing this. But some of the courses here, your basic vibration analysis, it's probably good for the basic, the newer of us, AMP. It's good to have. It's a working knowledge, just like the second one there, the C47B 150 300-hour inspection. It is a step-by-step right out of the book, but the instructor that's talking through that talks about the theory behind why do we do this inspection? Why are we doing this inspection? What should we be looking for? Again, it's a good refresher for everybody, but for the newer maintainers that you have, it should be in part of their training as a must do. You can also contact your regional managers. We have the ability to teach you. It says TSEC and or the FADAC maintenance terminal training for your mechanics. We can teach anything from the basic level of the old maintenance terminal, what is the legacy 407, or we can teach the 407 GXI that uses the GMT software that's shown up here on the right-hand side of the screen. We have our own training devices, so we won't need to use your airframe when we show up. We have our own ECUs, EECs, whichever the case may be. So as long as you have a place where we can project an image up on a wall, we'll be able to walk through and conduct some type of training here. And the training, obviously a 6-hour block or 8-hour block of training is not going to make you 100% proficient, but what it's going to do is get you proficient enough that with a phone call, we'll be able to communicate and get you into the right area that we need you to be at so we can start troubleshooting and get your airframes back in the air quicker. All right, now we're going to move into some technical updates. With the technical updates, again, this stuff was new as of last March. Before we talk about that, I'm going to quickly go through the dirty dozen, as we call it. You know, the lack of communication, it affects everybody. Just make sure you stay what you are willing to communicate, what is important at the beginning of that task and towards the end of your information flow, the communication. Make sure they know what you're trying to get out of whatever the task is that you're setting them off to do. Sorry. Your complacency, make sure that they understand that the complacency, the field errors are what is sending most of our M250s into the shops prior to their 2,000-hour expected time in there, time off wing, if you will. Lack of knowledge. Everybody started somewhere. So the lack of knowledge with this level of audience, you guys should be able to capture and make sure that the lack of knowledge is not an issue. Distractions. Make sure there are no distractions. You know, use a checklist. That way, if you do get pulled away, to look at the other airframe that's going out the door. If you have a checklist, you'll know exactly where you were when you come back to this one so you can move forward. Lack of teamwork, fatigue, lack of resources. Make sure you have the right stuff. Have what the book is calling for. If you don't have the proper maintenance stands, don't do the maintenance. If you don't have the proper manuals to do the maintenance, don't do the maintenance. Get the proper resources available. Pressure. The pressure is true. The pressure is real. You may not expect or think you're putting pressure on the people by simply being the guy from the office that walks out and stands over their shoulder. They may feel that pressure. So make sure they know that you're there just to witness, not to pressure or force them to do anything quicker. Lack of assertiveness. Make sure they know that they're able to say, hey, why? Why are we doing this? Stress, just like pressure. Make sure you manage the stress on yourself and on your team. Lack of awareness. And the norms. The norms is a big one. The norms, just because you've done it the same way forever, doesn't mean it hasn't changed in the book. So make sure you're always going back and looking at the book, and make sure that when you move from one company to another company, you'll see the huge difference in norms just from inside the company. One company does it A, B, C. The other company may do it D, E, F. So make sure the social norms or the individual norms for the company are not a roadblock to doing it the correct way. All right, here's our commitment to product improvement chart. Everything on this chart has been improved. You're going to hear me say improved airflow a bunch. Really what we're trying to do is improve performance. We want this engine to be able to bring us into the future where the aircraft are getting heavier, the aircraft are carrying more people. We don't want to have to develop another engine, so we're simply improving this one to make it do what we want. The M250 came out in 1963. It was 250 horsepower is what the requirement was to fulfill a military contract. We're currently producing anywhere from 650 to just shy of 800 horsepower with the same engine configuration, depending on what its fuel input capabilities are. So as you can see here, the diffuser has been modified, changed to improve the airflow. The impeller has been improved to increase the airflow efficiency. Your number one bearing seal, we'll talk about that here in just a little while as well. That has been completely reworked, re-engineered to reduce the leak probability, to provide a better longevity expectation. Your oil delivery tube, again, completely re-engineered to eliminate the number two bearings from getting hot. The number two bearing was actually re-engineered to improve its reliability with that additional oil flow. Your number five bearing, it was re-engineered for reliability improvements. Your number one stage turbine nozzle, that was also improved for airflow to help us make more horsepower. Your combustion liner, it was improved, modified to prevent a lot of the heat issues that we were having with hot and high performance. And the outer combustion case was improved to prevent the cracking that we were seeing around the fuel bosses and in the elbows and armpit areas. I'm not going to read the whole slide to you. The CSLs that cover this are over there on the left. The number one thing to take out of this is what's highlighted there in yellow. To date, we currently have 7 different types of synthetic fuel blends that are allowed to be used inside of our engines. The caveat currently is that fuel blend, that synthetic fuel, it has to be mixed with a 50-50 synthetic fuel to any conventional jet fuel. In the near future, that's going to change and we'll go to a 75-25 blend. And hopefully in the near future, we'll be at the 100% straight synthetic fuels or sustainable fuels, as it's called on this page. All right, here's some of the improvements that we've done. We talked about the, again, I'm sorry, on the left-hand side there, you can see the different series. These are all your Series 4 engines. The number 8 bearing thrust plate, that's the CEB that covers all of that. That CEB was actually published back in 2022. You have a new part number there listed. I'm going from the bottom up. You can see the M250 part number. Anytime our manuals have an M250 part number compared to a 2305, 06, 07 part number, if you have the ability, always get the M250 part number. It's the latest and greatest. It has all the improvements worked into it. That's a standard rule of thumb, but it's going to work out for you 95% of the time. And again, based on this, it's required replacement your next engine shop visit. If you're if you are an MD 600N operator or maintainer, this slide is specific for you. This is the M250 C47M. This is our software variant for the FADAC that's in that particular airframe. Prior to about 2 years ago, there was no FOST adapter requirement in there. They now have a FOST adapter that can go in that aircraft. Once you've updated to this particular software, it will allow the overspeed shutdown test to be functional. Other big improvements, it's going to eliminate a lot of the nuisance fault, some of your NG faults, some of your MP faults on shutdown. It's going to eliminate that, which is going to make the aircraft safer, because currently everybody simply acknowledges and deletes. If it does actually have an issue, you won't know until later down on the next flight. It also eliminates a lot of the nuisance watchdog timers, the dwell times here and dwell times there in the speed avoidance ranges. It eliminates a lot of that stuff as well. So again, this is basically for your MD 600N variant airframes. This is the same. This is the actual software update. I don't believe we have any C47Bs out there that still need to be updated. Your basic C47 Bell 407 airframes, They should be running a 5400 level. I believe that is 100% completed, but the C-47M software, it was released about 18 months ago. There's about 60 of these aircraft in the US. Those 60 are being worked through as I'm giving this, but there's still several out there. So if you have one that doesn't have a false adapter / the software update, if you'll reach out to your actual regional manager, get in contact with us, we can get you this kit, or we can come out and help walk you through being able to get this new software package installed on your system to eliminate a lot of the nuisance stuff that the last slide described. Again, that's the field loader kit there that you see in the orange box. There's the information you'll have to provide when you call us. We'll get you in contact. It usually takes about a week to get that kit to you. There are a handful of them sitting in Indianapolis at this point because, like I said, we knew where most of the aircraft were. We sent these kits out, but as aircraft get sold, we can lose contact with them. So that's the handful that we're still trying to track down. So if you know where they are, please pass that information to them, get them in contact with us. There is no charge for this. This is just an update. Here's your false adapter so we can make your aircraft engine function the way it's supposed to. All right, here's another huge improvement that was done. Unfortunately, this improvement comes with a CEB that's going to require some dollar bills to be spent by most operators. It's a compliance code 4, which basically means next time that compressor section is in the authorized repair overhaul facility and it's disassembled, it's going to affect this particular impeller based on part number. But the good news is there was a revision 1 that came out in October of 22. Prior to October of 22, if you had that particular part number, it was remove, trash, and replace. Now it's a remove, inspect, see if it's okay. Rolls-Royce did a lot of research to make sure that just because they've cut everything out of that secondary balance ring, it will cause it to crack quicker. But again, with some additional inspections, we've been able to save multiple impellers. So if you have one, don't just arbitrarily expect it to be trashed. It's going to be, hey, inspect it. If it's this thickness or this thickness or that kind of stuff, then we're going to be able to keep that impeller on wing, on engine, and you'll be able to move it forward. Here's a couple other CBs. This is for a Series 2 engine, your 206s, your standard MDs, several other airframe types. Basically, this is taking a older style, as you can see on the left, the 2306 5818. Slight modifications to the turbine wheel, to the number 3 turbine wheel, to the new one. Again, compliance code 4. This has to be done next time it's an authorized repair overhaul facility, disassembled for any reason. It has to be done at the next time you replace the turbine wheels. You're not able to keep this turbine wheel in there once it goes in for that. So it's just something to keep in the back of your mind. This improvement is supposed to eliminate a lot of the early fractures of the turbine wheels that you may see. All right, regular scheduled inspections. All series overhaul and maintenance manuals have been altered for inspection 2 as below. You used to have a 100, 200 traditional items. They've all been moved to a 150, 300. Many of those 150-hour inspection items have been moved to a 300-hour inspection based on oils that you use. If you're using a higher rate oil, then you don't have to inspect certain things as often. Again, this is all out of table 603. Just it's out there, but we get a lot of phone calls going, why did my inspections all change? This is one of those things that I was talking about. The norm is you have a PDF copy or a Word document copy of this inspection. If you haven't went back in the book in the last handful of months to see if it's been updated, it has been. You're probably over inspecting your engines at this point because a lot of those 150-hour inspections have been pushed to the 300-hour. Number 5 bearing. Number 5 bearing was redesigned to improve the retaining ring on this particular bearing. If you guys have been around the M250 for any length of time, you know, back in the, we'll call it the 2010 to 2014, 15 timeframe, we couldn't get a bearing to last more than several hundred hours. They would never go their full expected life term because this retaining ring was made based on a 1963 drawing. The information was moved from one manufacturer to another, and that manufacturer made it exactly to spec. Unfortunately, that spec, that metal, that spring clamp, the tensile strength or spring forcing clamp strength of that metal had changed over that 50-year period. And it allowed that fractured race to expand. And when it expanded, it started galling the bearings, and nothing good happened at that point. So to date, we have about 3,000 hours on some of these things that are in the lead to fleet. Again, this is a true statement as of probably 2018. This is in here every year. This brief is usually given at HAI, and this is in here just to reconfirm that we're trying to improve. We know we were broke. We didn't make bearings very well. Then in the late teens, 2017, 18, we couldn't make a turbine wheel to save ourselves. So that's why the turbine wheel information was in there on a prior slide as well. Oil filter housing regulator valves. There's a new conical poppet design. This was, again, old. It was designed and released back in 2016, but based on the number of these filter housings that we already had built, this didn't get implemented in the production line until 2021. So if you have a older style, the flat style that you see on the right, and it starts to stick or whatever, the conical poppet is the newer variant, the newer version. It's the one that won't stick as often. It's usually a whole lot more user friendly once you get that in there. I don't know that anybody has had issues with this new conical poppet, at least in my region. Commercial engine bulletin compliance codes. You can see the full laundry list there. We have 1 through 8. 8's been added recently. There was we used to just delete CEBs, commercial engine bulletins, and now we can no longer delete them. So once we actually implement the changes into the overhaul maintenance manual, instead of deleting it, we'll simply make that CEB a code 8, which means, hey, it is here, but all that technical information is already in the tech pubs. So you really don't need to do both. You're using the tech pub, you don't need the CEB, but we can no longer delete the CEBs. So that's why we've created a code 8. Most of the compliance codes that we issue out will fall under that number 4. There are a few that are falling under the number 2. Unfortunately, one of the big ones is your oil delivery tube to the number 2 bearing, what a lot of people call the piccolo tube. That piccolo tube has a drop dead date at the end of this calendar year, 31 December 2023, and there are several that are still not been completed. The piccolo tubes have not been changed out. Not a big deal for your Part 91s, but anybody higher than that, it's a huge deal if you're going to stay in compliance. They're available. They're at your First Network facilities. You just need to reach out, schedule, and get your gearboxes in there so they can get that piccolo tube installed. That CEB for that piccolo tube has been out for 15 years. I just got information yesterday. They are not going to extend that. We attempted to. Back in July timeframe, they put in a request for the FAA to try to give another 1 year, another 12 months calendar date on it. And it was shot down and told absolutely not. No, it's already been 15 years. Here's your fuel pump spline checks. Again, this is for your Series 2, your non-FADEC controlled engines. This pump check has been around for years. Here is the way that you have to check it. Here's the hours for pumps with over 1,000 hours. You now have to inspect them every 150, or I'm sorry, you have to inspect it within 150 hours, and then every 750 after that. Pumps less than 1,000, again, do it at 1,000, then do it every 750 after that. Your oil check valve, compliance code 3. Next time the engine is sent in for authorized repair overhaul facility for any reason, this has to be done. The problem with this was the seat, as you can see that little ring on the picture, that's not supposed to have that groove built in it. It's supposed to be flat. So as this thing works and vibrates, it's literally making its own seat or own groove down in there. And eventually it will blow that seat or groove all the way through. And that's the picture there with it halfway down on the spring itself. Again, these parts are available through Boeing Distribution, BDI. If you're dealing with a Series 2, it's the M250 10893. If you're dealing with a Series 4, it's the M250 10894. Make sure you get these things replaced as you can. Here's that number one bearing. Your number one bearing, this is now going to be installed dry. You don't have to soak it prior to. You can see the part number there, M250 10913. These were available now for a handful of years. We basically took the old wavy style spring. That spring, it says it was known for nesting. Basically what would happen is over the heat cycles, that spring would get weak and it would allow that spring to collapse, which meant it didn't push out as hard as it should, which meant you would get an oil leak straight into your straight from this number one bearing. It would leak out into the inlet area. The new has these 3 coil spring style that go around the circumference of that seal. We have yet to have one of the new styles fail because of a spring issue. We've had issues with it. This is the latest and greatest that's here, that part number. Again, nothing is ever going to be perfect, but the new style is way better than the old ones. If you're looking for longevity, you need to go with that M250 10913. Anytime you're dealing with a number one seal issue, had a bunch of customers just replace the seal. They put it in, then they think, okay, well, maybe the seal was put in wrong. So they're calling their first network providers at this point because they gave it a shot and didn't do it correct. The first network provider will show up. He always will bring some kind of pressure test capability so they can pressure test that forward support. It's not a huge percentage of the time, but if you have a number one seal that's leaking and a forward support that's leaking, you can't installed, you can't tell which has failed. The little brazes that run the anti-ice oils through those veins, if one of them come undone, it's just like a number one seal being bad. You're going to get the same smoky residue, the same orange oil in the inlet area. It's hard, it's next to impossible to tell exactly where it's coming from. So anytime you're doing a number one carbon seal, my recommendation is always do the forward support pressure test at the same time, just to make sure that we're not replacing a seal that doesn't need to be replaced, or worse, doing the 5 or 6 hours of maintenance it is to replace a seal, to reinstall it, to then later find out that we have a bad forward support. All right, a little GMT stuff here. This is for your 407 GXI teams, C47E4 engines. It is now called a ground maintenance terminal instead of just the maintenance terminal. Every aircraft is delivered with that yellow and blue cable on the left. Obviously, you have the cannon plug that hooks up to the aircraft, and you do have a yellow and blue cable that runs off of it. That is because the GXI is a dual FADAC, dual EEC ran helicopter. So one will run channel A and the blue one will run channel B. You also have a little bitty short, it's all white on that picture, and there's a toggle at the end of it. This EEC is very complex, and it has 2 modes. It has a normal mode and it has a boot mode. If you're wanting to receive instant data like do a trend report or something like that, you'll be in open mode or normal mode. If you want to look at historical data, change serial numbers, look at clear the faults, look at the faults, stuff like that, stuff that happened on last engine run or older, then you'll go into boot mode to be able to see all of that stuff. The ground maintenance terminal software is available on our FAST website. Again, the easiest way to do this is to contact your regional manager. This is a very complex, it's very hard to walk through as an individual as an individual operator, if you haven't done it before or haven't heard anything about it before, if you contact your regional managers, we have how-to guides, PowerPoint slideshows that will show you pictures step by step how to install it. It's not just plug and play like everybody is used to. It's not as simple. It's not just plug and play, even as easy as what the maintenance terminal software is. When you download this zip file, before you open it, you have to go out to the internet and receive another program to make this program work 100% correctly to communicate. And then you're going to have to change your Ethernet numbers exactly what the information in those how-to guides tell you to, so it can talk back and forth to the EEC and back. Again, here's where it's located. You can still go and download it there. I would recommend contacting your regional manager or reaching out to the customer support team back in Indianapolis to get help to get your GMT software installed and communicating. Downloading and installing it is not the hard part. Doing a proper install so it's able to communicate with the helicopter, it takes a little bit of time and a little bit of know-how. And if you use the how-to guide, it's okay. If you don't use the how-to guide, it can be very complicated. Again, same thing here. We have a version 2.1 that has been released. Unfortunately, the version 2.1, it doesn't work well with Windows 11. It's okay with the older versions. If you have a Windows 7 or a Windows XP, it works awesome. But when you start talking about newer computers, Windows 10, it will work in one mode and not the other. Windows 11, it will not function at all. So currently our 2.1 that was released back in April of 22, it does work. It does allow, just like everything up there says, it allows the individual operators to have a little bit more access to stuff. But at this time, I'm going to ask you to stay with stay with the version 2.0, because version 2.0, it works as advertised, and we're a phone call away. If you do a download, you can send it directly into me. I'm able to send it into our home office, our rear support. They're able to hook it up to their engineering computers so they can get the data out of it that we need and get it back to you, usually within 24 hours. So if you do download version 2.1, it may or may not function correctly for you, and you may be 2 or 3 days fighting with it before you even get the information to us. Again, we can get the information back to you very, very quickly. All right, a few field tips and reminders. If you have oil leaks from your accessory pad, there's a new part there that's been approved. It seals a little bit tighter in that gearbox bore. It comes along with its installation guide. Again, there's nothing worse than having a leak where you don't even have a component hanging off of. If you go through this, there's the part number is there. When it comes, it usually comes with a piece of paper that will explain the installation process of this, and it just will help eliminate a lot of the nuisance leaks that are out there. C47E4s, again, GXIs. We're currently fighting with the GXI oil filtration system. It's not something that the engineers are willing to go, hey, no, we're not doing that. We actually did a field survey. We had a bunch of the higher use field guys send oil filters back in that have had this bypass activation. We've ran the test on those. All of them did have some particulates in the filter. So the filter is doing its job well. The reason we're getting this impending bypass on the GXI that we're not getting on the old legacy 407 GXs, GXPs, it is still both a 3 micron filter. This has additional sheets of 3 micron filtration inside of them. This also has a much higher beta rate, meaning the oil rotates through the filter per hour more times than it does in the other version. Some of our larger fleets, what we've asked them to do to eliminate this filter is about $700 to eliminate the filter bypass and having to replace the filter again 50 to 75 hours after an oil change, is complete the oil change, leave the old filter in place, run the aircraft, send the aircraft on its next mission day, whether that's a 5-hour, 8-hour mission. When it comes back, then replace the filter. And upon replacing the filter that time, the new filters generally go in and make it the full 300-hour mark. This isn't something that it is always happening on new airframes within 50 to 75 hours of it being delivered new. It is also, we're seeing it happen upon oil changes, whether that's at the annual or at the 300-hour mark. When we do an oil change, usually within the first 100 hours, we'll get a bypass indication. The only way to cure that bypass indication, to keep it from happening again 10 hours or 15 hours later, is to replace this filter element. And again, this filter element's about $700. Starting issues, your battery condition is going to be an important factor in this. Does the engine start fine off ground power? Do we have air leaks? Have we checked around the B nuts? No air leaks. What about your PC filter? Is that clogged? Do we have fuel issues? Do we have fuel at the inlet pump? What about your fuel nozzle? When's the last time you cleaned that nozzle? Did it have a good spray pattern? What about your starter? Have we checked to see that the starter is spooling quickly? Or I'm sorry, spooling the N1 quickly? What's the peak N1 available to be reached based on that starter motor? Compressor condition. Fuel control. Has the fuel control been adjusted lately? Has the fuel scheduling been changed? These are all questions that you can expect to be asked if you contact any Rolls-Royce support element looking for help on starter issues. We're not asking them trying to second guess you. We're asking because we're not standing there next to you, and we want to make sure that the simplest thing wasn't overlooked. So we're going to start back at the absolute basics and bring it forward from there. Some additional starting issues, fuel measurement. Anytime you're dealing with this fuel measurement, whether it's new or you're starting over, you need to go to that neutral position, that 7 dots counterclockwise. Motor that engine at 15% M1, open your throttle, 15 seconds, close the throttle. When you have that throttle open, make sure the guy up there knows that he's supposed to keep that 15% as close as he can by engaging and disengaging the throttle for that full 15 seconds. After the 15 seconds, obviously stop. Read your fuel level. When you read that fuel level on your C20s, you can see the milliliters that you're supposed to have. If you're at sea level, that's where you should be. At higher elevations, that fuel should be slightly lower. Don't just do it once and go with that measurement. You should do this. You should do the average between 2 to 3 different measurements. If your fuel flow is too high, turn that accelerator adjustment counterclockwise. If it's too low, turn that accelerator clockwise. Here's your doing some maintenance on your fuel nozzle. Again, fuel nozzles are irrelevant. Doesn't matter what engine it comes out of. This is the best way to clean that fuel nozzle. That Berlin 512 is great stuff. Don't use the Dixie cup. Ask me how I know. When you're done cleaning it, we recommend you not use a brush like a toothbrush to do it. I've seen the nylon bristles get stuck inside of those things. So just, clean cloth would usually wipe most of that carbon off. If it needs more than that, then it may be time to disassemble and clean it that way. Speaking of disassembling, on your 300-hour, here's how you can disassemble it. So as you go through to disassemble this thing and you put it back together, make sure you have the current fuel nozzle screen, the picture on the right-hand side there. If your fuel nozzle screen does not look like that, there has been a part number change. Make sure you get the latest and greatest. The other one, we had a few that lost that little cap at the end that created an issue downstream, which is directly into your compressor. I'm sorry, into your turbine. Fuel nozzle shimming. For most of these M250s, it's not a big deal. What we've discovered in the last 2 years is this E4 is very, very finicky, very, very touchy on our fuel nozzle shimming. So if you have a GXI airframe that is starting not exactly as you would like it, whether it's a slow start, hot start, or a warmer than expected start, your fuel shimming can correct that or modify that greatly. Again, our recommendation is, even for all series, you should re-verify that at your 300-hour fuel nozzle cleaning. Once you clean it and get it reinstalled, you may not have torqued it the same amount as the other guy torqued it. Something could have shifted. Let's recheck and make sure that our shims are correct. Here is your outer combustion case. We need to make sure that the 300-hour inspection items, a lot of them have been moved. So again, visual inspect, let's make sure we don't have these cracks. I last week had an aircraft that was down on power and their outer combustion case had not the crack on the left, but the same crack that is in the picture on the left with the red arrows. So please make sure you're doing visual inspections. A small crack doesn't stay a small crack for very long. It will become a larger crack like you're seeing there. And even the larger cracks, they don't stay just large cracks very long. They will very rapidly become really large cracks. And if it becomes a really large crack, you're losing a really huge amount of power, which, depending on where your aircraft's at the time, could become bigger issues other than just loss of power. Your turbine assemblies and B-nuts, make sure you're doing the proper torque paint on the turbine assemblies or on the entire engine assembly, but make sure that they're there when you do your inspection. Make sure there's no signs of movements. Some more turbine assembly B-nut stuff. If you look at it there, we're doing some leak checks. It's hard to find leak checks. If the airframe is, or the engine is actually at temperature hot, it's a little easier to find because everything expanded the way it's supposed to. You can see the crack there that has the little red circle around it. Again, not easy to find when it's hidden under a B-nut and the little colic that slides up there, the little collar that slides up there. So make sure you're doing really good tests when you do have an issue. It could be something as simple as a cracked line. There's some other damages or dents in the lines just to be aware of. If you do have that issue, we need to resolve it, replace that line. Same thing if it's on the radius of the bend. Here's some tube fitments, part numbers. Everything is the same. Nothing's been changed on these. Other ways to identify those lines. Here's your conical seals. Conical seals can be used on any one of these flared ends. They are not required to be used on any of the flared ends. So if you don't have them, you're fine. If you do have them and you have a bit of a leak, you can always put in a conical seal and see if that helps before you go to the next step and start replacing the bosses and the tubes and lines themselves. Some of these lines are now getting fairly pricey. Had a 6-inch line replaced on an MD a handful of weeks ago that was just a touch over $800 for a 6-inch line. Here's your bearing locations, mag plug inspections. You can see the different bearings there. Bearing number 1 is usually captured on the upper chip. Bearing 2 and 5, as well as the gearbox gears, will be captured on both your upper and lower chip detectors. Your 6, 7, 8 bearings are almost always captured on the upper chip. So 1, 6, 7, 8 are generally upper chips. 5 and 7 and anything internal of the gearbox is usually captured on both your lower and upper chips. There's your mag plug itself. You need to log each one of your light events, especially if you're not the only maintainer working through this particular aircraft. There it talks about the chip sizes or 4 slivers. If it's more than that, again, contact your regional manager. There's not a lot of wiggle room if you have a chip that's bigger than that 32 thousandths, or if you have slivers that are more number-wise greater than 4, and you have that within 50 hours of each other, the chances of us being able to get some kind of tech variant to move forward are going to be slim to none. We have had a little bit of success being able to get run-up or one-time flight provisions to get it off of rooftops for our EMS airframes and get it back to their facility. But to actually be able to put it back in service is almost impossible once you've broken the book requirement for chips that would require a replacement of something. All right, a few closing remarks. Remember, there's nothing that I talked about in this that is supposed to make you want to do it my way and not do it exactly by the manual. So everything is in that publication. Make sure you use it. It's there for a reason. If you have questions regarding the content of this presentation or other inquiries, please contact your regional manager or drop a message to the Rolls-Royce website. That helicopter customer support is what that means, at rolls-royce.com. That is who I contact. When you've contacted me and it's something I'm not able to handle, I will reach out and contact that website. That website is monitored and manned, but again, the flow of information that goes into that website, it can take a few days for you to get an answer back. So simply please be patient with us. And that is the end of this presentation. Thank you very much. I hope this wasn't a waste of your time. Thank you for your time.